Good morning. I'd like to share a story with you today from my first book, Ballads and Tales of the Woods. This story I wrote for the upper elementary and middle school grades. It's a story called An Adventure in the Woods. I wrote this back when I was in the Ozark Mountains in Arkansas. As a teacher, I actually lived and worked in a one-room school. I had 11 kids, and they were there Monday through Wednesday. That gave me the other days to write. And one weekend when I was there all by myself, I had been working on a story and decided to go visit one of the families just to take a break. And as I was walking along this trail, I had my basket on my back. In those days, I always traveled with my ash splint basket, and for some reason, the sun shined over my shoulder, and I could see my shadow, and obviously with something on my back, and I don't know why, but I got to thinking about having a radio transmitter on my back. Who knows idea where that came from. And also, at the same time, the spaceship Challenger was going around the planet with Sally Ride on board, the first woman in space. So then as I walked along, I guess having a little too much time by myself, I got to thinking of this crazy story that popped into my head. And part of it was the fact that here, I'm living in the Ozark Mountains in Arkansas, spending time with a lot of these good, interesting country folk. And at the same time, here we are in a society where we're putting people up in space and on rocket ships. And so anyway, you'll see how that all comes about. This is just me poking a little fun of stuff going on around us. It's called An Adventure in the Woods. And the story goes like this. Once, upon a Sunday afternoon, I had been sitting at my desk in the one-room schoolhouse working on some of my stories with my old manual typewriter, as there wasn't any electricity in the school and there was no running water. And after about 3 hours, when, my fingers were tired and my butt was getting sore, I thought, Rick, it's time for you to take a break. Well, a break for me is a walk in the woods. So I thought, this is Sunday. I'm going to hike over to Perry and Suzanne's house. They were a couple that had a couple kids in the school. Now I knew, being a Sunday, a single guy, Suzanne would probably invite me to dinner, which I always thought was a great idea because she was a great cook. And I thought, well, I should take something to share. So I had some apples and oranges, and I put those in my basket. And then I thought, well, it's a Sunday. It's going to be late by the time I come home, and I don't want to carry a lantern or a flashlight, so I'll just spend the night, and I'll come with the kids on Monday morning. So I had my blankets in my basket and those apples and oranges, and then I thought, rats, Rick, you can't go walking through the woods today. This is the last day of hunting season. You go walking through the woods during hunting season, you're going to come home with your face looking like a spaghetti colander. But then I thought, hey, you know what? The hunters, they have a right to be in the woods. It's important for hunters to be out there. But I thought, I should be able to walk in the woods too. Well, I didn't want to be a dead fool. So I walked outside the schoolhouse. I got a stick about that long. I brought that stick in and I poked it down inside my basket and I put the blankets up against it. Then, being a teacher, I got a bright orange piece of construction paper and I taped it to the top of the stick. So when I put my basket on, that stick stuck up in the air about a foot above my head, and with that bright orange piece of construction paper up there, I figured those guys would either have to be sound asleep because no way can they mistake me for a deer and then go shoot holes through my face. But with my basket on my back, I took off out of the schoolhouse and I walked this old gravel road that went by the old McCoy place, and I hiked over the Harwood family pasture, and then I went down into those Ozark woods. Well, there was an old logging trail that kind of scooted through the woods, and I stayed on that for a while, but being hunting season, I was whistling and singing and kicking the brush, letting the hunters know I was coming. And then I reached a spot where the logging road turned to go to the west, and there was this little footpath that I knew I could follow and stay right on this ridge and come out at the Hayes place. Well, it reached a spot where the woods opened up, and I got this view of the Ozark Mountains. And I thought, how lucky can you be? Here you are, Rick Rogers, living in the Ozark Mountains in Arkansas. Look at those mountains and nobody around for miles. And anyway, I kept walking, and That's when I reached a spot where I began to turn and the sun shined over my shoulder and it cast my shadow out in front of me. Well, when I looked down at my shadow with the basket on my back and the stick up in the air, my shadow reminded me of an RTO. Now, the RTOs are the Marines. They're the guys that carry the radio transmitters on their back with that antenna above their head so they can call in airstrikes, helicopters, or whatever they need if they get in trouble. So I was looking at my shadow and I thought, looky there. Rick Rogers, U.S. Marine in the Ozark Mountains. One bad dude. Don't mess with him. Well, as I was walking along with that sophisticated radio on my back with the antenna up in the air, I remembered that the spaceship Challenger was up in space with Sally Ride on board, the first woman in space. And I thought, you know, Rick, now that you've got this sophisticated radio on your back, I'm surprised the astronauts haven't called you up for some advice. And just then, it was the strangest thing. There was this static sound that filled the air. I stopped and looked around. Oh, maybe it was a hunter or something, but there wasn't anybody else around. I took a couple more steps, and now not only did the static sound come back, but the basket began to shake. The stick began to quiver. That bright orange piece of paper just stuck straight out in the air. And then this voice came out of nowhere and said, "Challenger to Rick! Challenger to Rick! Come in, Rick! Over!" I thought, can you believe it? Astronauts are talking to me. I said, "Hi, this is Rick. What can I do for you? Over?" And this voice came back and said, "Hi, Rick. This is Sally Ride, mission specialist. We're having trouble with our high-tech toaster. It's gone on the fritz, and it ain't working right. Can you help us out? Over." I said, "I sure can, Sally. You came to the right place. If it's a high-tech toaster and it ain't working right, no problem. Hit it with a hammer. Over." She said, "We can't. Over." I said, "Why can't you, Sally? Over." She said, "You can't use hammers up here in space. If you lose your grip, they get loose and poke holes in the roof. Over." I said, "Okay, Sally, if it's a high-tech toaster and it ain't working right, you can't hit it with a hammer. I got it. Pour a bucket of water into it. Over." She said, "We can't. Over." I said, "Why can't you, Sally?" She said, "You can't drink water up here in space. It blows up in your face and gets all over your spacesuit. Over." I said, "Okay, looky here. If it's a high-tech toaster and it ain't working right, you can't hit it with a hammer and you can't pour a bucket of water into it. You got to squirt some liquid into it. Go back into the space shuttle kitchen. Open up the kitchen cabinet. Reach in there. Get one of those tubes of space food that you all eat that says 2 eggs over light, home fries, biscuits, and gravy, 3 pancakes, maple syrup, 2 cups of coffee, 1 free refill. Squirt that into it. Over." She said, "We can't. Over." I said, "Confound it, Sally. Why can't you? Over." She said, "Because we done ate that one. Over." I said, "Okay, looky here, Sally. If it's a high-tech toaster, it ain't working right. You can't hit it with a hammer. You can't pour water into it. You can't squirt liquid into it." I know. Go in the front of the space shuttle. Shut the cameras off so the folks back home can't see you. Then go back into the space shuttle kitchen. Take the high-tech toaster, set it down on the floor. Then take your great big old space boot and stomp on it and call me back." And just then, the woods went deadly silent. I started to take another step, and that's when 2 hunters popped up on either side of the path. They turned and started shooting at me, kapow, 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 like I was a 12-point buck. Well, I took off running through those woods doing about 90 miles an hour. I didn't stop till I got to my friend's house. I come sliding into their living room. I popped up on my feet. My heart was pounding away to beat the band. My friends looked at me and they said, "What happened to you?" And I replied, "Not much. Just another little adventure in the woods. Over."